In this video, I'm going to tell you how to win every single solo queue game of Pokémon Unite, except for the ones that you have to lose. Hello everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about some strategies that will give you a higher win rate in solo queue, but I'm going to warn you right now, this isn't exactly how I love to play Pokémon Unite. It's just the truth of winning as many games as possible inside Unite. Let's get into it. The first thing that you're going to want to do if you want to increase your win rate and win more games and win as many solo queue games as you can inside of Pokemon Unite is to play a Pokemon that carries games. I know. I don't necessarily love this either. There are some times where I want to play a support or I want to play a defender with an EXP share. I don't necessarily want to try to carry every single game. It's not my favorite way to play all the time. However, if you're looking to win as many games as possible and have the highest win rate possible, you need to be playing Pokemon that can carry, deal damage, and ideally secure objectives. So many matches inside of Pokemon Unite come down to the final fight. The fight at Rayquaza or the fight at or around the 2-minute mark that sort of decides what happens inside the match. And very often the team that secures Rayquaza wins. Not always the team that secures Rayquaza wins. However, most of the time, I would wager if there was some way to find the stats, probably 85% of the time at least, the team that gets Ray is the team that ends winning the match. The reason that you want to play a high damage or a carry Pokemon, especially something with some secure, is most all games come down to the final fight inside of Pokemon Unite. Now, there are a lot of things that lead up to this moment and give you the ability to win this fight, but in general, the team that gets Rayquaza is more likely to win the match. I would say if there was some way to look at the statistics here, 85% of the time the team that gets Rayquaza wins, and then probably the other 15% of the time the other team has a possibility of winning. There are lots of ways you can win if a team gets Rayquaza, but in general, you win the Ray fight and you get Ray, you win the match. So what does it mean when I talk about playing a carry Pokemon or a high damage Pokemon with great secure? Well, oftentimes you're talking about Pokemon that are all-rounders, attackers, and speedsters or defenders that happen to do a ton of damage. I'm looking at Pokemon like Lapras and Blastoise. Crustle is a great example of a defender that does a ton of damage right now. It's going to be important for you to play something that helps you win fights rather than relying on your allies to be the ones to win the fights for you. Basically, if you are the best player on your team, the way the game matches the teams up, at some point you're going to either be forced to carry your games or start to have your win rate suffer. The reason this is the case is because the higher you get in MMR, the matchmaking rating inside the game, which we don't have an exact formula of, but we kind of have a general idea of how it works. The higher you get, the worse allies you are paired with and the better enemies that you are going to be facing on the other side. It's kind of a weird situation and it's not an ideal system for matchmaking inside of Pokemon Unite, but it's just the truth. The higher you get in MMR, once you hit that master rank and you're starting to climb and climb and climb, the worst situations you are going to be put in by the game, and for that reason, you're going to need to figure out how to carry your games. When you think about carry Pokemon, oftentimes you're thinking about what is extremely overpowered and popular inside the meta. For instance, Zacian is a great example of an amazing carry Pokemon that has so much influence over a map. It can rip down an objective, it has incredible secure over objectives, even with its auto attacks, but with its Unite move and Sacred Sword, it also does amazing in fights. Once it gets some experience, it carries super hard. This is the kind of Pokemon that if you're looking specifically just to climb and you want to have the best win rate possible, that's the kind of Pokemon that you want to be focusing on. There are so many Pokemon inside the game that I absolutely love, but just don't fit this bill. So if this is what you are looking for to win the most games possible, you kind of have to stay away from Pokemon that don't carry as hard. Again, the kind of Pokemon you're looking for are things with high damage output, great bursts so you can secure objectives and pick up a bunch of KOs, and at the same time, if you can find it, something that's also quite bulky. This is why high damage defenders are definitely in this category. My next tip would be to have a few Pokemon that sort of fit this bill for you. So you're not going to want to have only one Pokemon that you can count on and just, if you don't get it, you're in so much trouble. You're going to want to make sure that you have a few different Pokemon that can kind of fill out your roster, but still focused on carrying the games. Ideally, you want something that's really good in jungle. Jungle is the most important area inside the game for gathering experience. So if you are the best player on your team and you get your jungle, or the central area as Pokemon Unite calls it, that is going to give you the best opportunity to get the most experience possible and help carry your team. There are lots of Pokemon that are good in that central area. Right now, Dragapult is an amazing example of a Pokemon that just carries super hard, is overpowered, and does really, really well in that central area. Once you've got a few Pokemon that you like in the central area, you're going to want to have a couple things that do really, really well in lane. And they're actually kind of different. It's often the conversation that people have around something like lane Greninja. Lane Greninja isn't necessarily terrible. Greninja is still a carry. You can get a lot of experience with it. But if you're in lane, this is a time where I think you should play something that works a lot better in lane, but still carries super hard. Your Zacians, your Blastoises, your Laprases, or a ton of the all-rounders inside the game do so well in lane. They don't necessarily need the jungle. So when you can't get jungle and you want to support your team by carrying super hard, I would pick a strong laner, something that can win lane very easily. Some matches can be tough where you're in lane with something that doesn't particularly do well for a while and the enemy team has a strong lane against you. You're just going to get really far behind in experience, and it's going to be hard to get that experience lead you need to carry your team. And getting experience really is the name of the game when it comes to carrying your team. There are a few ways to do this. Let's talk about the jungle really quick. If you're playing the jungle or central area role in Pokemon Unite, your job is to move through your jungle, clear it out, head to a lane, and help your team win in a fight in that lane. Obviously, once the bees spawn at 8:50, once they spawn once again in the central area, birds at this point at 8 minutes, 7:20 in the top or bottom path as well, and then to an objective. Your job is to move through your central area getting experience, go to a lane and use that experience lead to win a fight, head back to your central area, get all of your experience, go to a lane, win a fight, rinse and repeat. That is essentially your job as a central area Pokemon. If you do this well, you're going to have a level advantage against your opponents, and you need to use that level advantage and the fact that you have an early Unite move to secure big KOs and objective wins. If you're in lane, your job is somewhat similar. You want to make sure that you secure as much experience as possible using Pokemon that have great last hitting tools to do that. Also, if you're playing inside of your lane, you're going to want to make sure that while you're winning your lane, you figure out a way to give your team an even bigger advantage by scoring and stacking if your Pokemon stacks extremely well. And let's take a little bit of a tangent and talk about stacking briefly. Your stacking items, the attack weight, Aeos, Cookie, and special attack specs are incredibly useful on the right Pokemon. And if you are trying to carry games in a solo queue setting, it is often the case that you're going to want to stack on your Pokemon. There are Pokemon that don't stack particularly well and carry super hard without it. Again, we talked about Zacian earlier. That's a great example. Or something like Dragapult. You don't need to stack on a Pokemon like this. However, there are many strong carry Pokemon, something like a Zarina, that stacking is basically mandatory if you want to carry super hard. The reason on some Pokemon that stacking is so important is because it's like having a ton of extra levels for your Pokemon, and again, your Pokemon's level and their power is extremely important if you're trying to carry. So take a Pokemon like Zarina, for example. At level 6, Zarina has 233 base attack stat. A fully stacked attack weight is 90 extra attack. Zarina doesn't get 90 extra attack until it hits level 12. That's right, level 12. Essentially, if you have a fully stacked attack weight on Zarina at level 6, you almost have the attack stat of a level 12 Zarina, and this influences just about every single thing inside this Pokemon's kit. Again, there are Pokemon that are better at stacking, Pokemon that are worse at stacking, but if your Pokemon scales particularly well, you are going to want to stack in solo queue. And we've talked about it a lot, but experience really is the name of the game. If you're entering the final moments of the match, which is right around the 2-minute mark, and you're under, I'd say, level 13 with any of these carry Pokemon, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. There are a few things you can do to make sure that you keep a level advantage inside of a match. One of them is farm. Make sure you're getting all of your farm that you possibly can. Another thing is noticing high level enemies on the enemy team and taking them out. If you see an enemy that is, let's say, level 12 when you are level 9 or 10 or something like that, picking up that KO can almost make up that entire experience gap. Sometimes it's extremely valuable to use a Unite move to KO a higher level enemy so that you can stay in parity level wise. It's extremely important. Also, if you happen to lose top or bottom tier 1 goal, I wouldn't stress about it too much because it does give you access to insane amounts of experience in the top and bottom path. The Indites that spawn top and bottom are huge chunks of experience. They come back every single minute, and they're going to give you the ability to come back inside of a game if you are behind. And if you're already ahead, they're just going to give you more experience. I talked briefly about your Unite move, and it's pretty important to understand how valuable your Unite move is and when to use it. Without question, I think you should be aggressive with your Unite move so that you can win fights and so you can take objectives. Top or bottom objective is going to give you team-wide XP, while top objective is going to push some damage towards the enemy side as well as possible scoring opportunities. Both can provide your team some decent value, and in general, you're going to want to win those fights around those objectives and use your Unite move to do so. Your Unite move not only is your most powerful move inside the game, it also gives you a shield and a boost to your stats depending on what class or Pokemon you are, so it's extremely important to use your Unite move well. Again, a great way to do this is to notice high level enemies on the enemy team and use your Unite move to secure those big KOs. You can come back in a match in a big way, or if you're already winning, you can keep the pressure on. Another thing to notice is when to use your last Unite move before Rayquaza. For most Pokemon, and Pokemon all have different Unite move timers, but for most Pokemon, about as late as you can get a Unite move out is around 3 minutes 30 seconds, 3 minutes 45-ish seconds. Again, there are some Pokemon that just have crazy cooldown like Leafeon or something like that who can charge a Unite move in about a minute. But in general, you've got sort of that last window to use a Unite move before you need to save that last Unite move and not use it again because Rayquaza is coming up and you want to make sure you have your Unite for it. The difference between having a Unite at the most important fight in the game and not having a Unite at the most important fight in the game can often mean the difference between winning and losing. And when you're in that fight and you use your Unite move and you're able to target an enemy and start picking up KOs, the enemy team can often fall like dominoes. Again, this is the most important fight of the game and you're going to want to make sure you win it. Have your Unite move for this fight. It's so incredibly important. I've talked a little bit about having a secure tool, and I think it's extremely important. There are a lot of Pokemon with really good secure tools and some that are not so ideal inside of Pokemon Unite. The reason you want a strong secure tool is some matches just come down to a full-on everybody hits Rayquaza, and whoever is able to get that big last burst of damage is going to secure it for their team. Having a Pokemon that gives you that ability is extremely important, while at the same time making sure you are near that objective is extremely important. If you're chasing a couple enemies away from Rayquaza and you're leaving up to your team, you are now taking the game out of your hands and placing it into the hands of your teammates who, in lots of situations, are going to be less skilled than you are if you've been climbing and you're a very, very strong carry. It's just the truth of how the game works. When you're loading into a match and you see that you're all the way on the left side of the loading screen, it means you have the highest MMR inside that match, outside of duos, trios getting placed before you. But in solo queue, the person all the way to the left is the highest MMR. If that is you, that means you are kind of responsible for carrying your game. It's not exactly how I want things to be in Pokemon Unite, but it is how matchmaking works, and because of that, you're going to want to make sure you're around Rayquaza so that you can influence the match. A massively important thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is how to secure wins inside of Pokemon Unite. It's not just necessarily winning that fight, it's also securing or possibly not securing Rayquaza depending on how the match is going. A very important factor as to what you need to do around Rayquaza is how the match has been going up to that point and where you're at score wise. Some games just come down to no one taking Ray, sort of a stalemate fight around Rayquaza, people possibly running to score at certain points, and if that's the case, you being behind on score means that you absolutely need to win this fight, and most likely you need to take down Rayquaza. In fact, if given the opportunity, wiping the entire enemy team or something like that, and you have the ability to take Rayquaza off the map, even if you are already winning, you should remove this objective from the map if possible. There are situations where this just doesn't work out. There aren't enough people on your team. You just don't have the kind of damage to take Ray down, and the enemy team is respawning. In that situation, there really isn't a lot you can do. But in general, Rayquaza is the win condition for most of these matches. If you can take that and either secure the win that you already have, come back from a match you're behind, or take away a win condition from your opponents, that is extremely important. A good rule of thumb is if the enemies have big timers and 4 of them are down and your team is looking pretty good, just wipe Rayquaza off the map. Yes, there's a possibility someone on the enemy team can take it, and you're going to want to try to stop them if at all possible. But even if they take Rayquaza and it's just one of them, you can often still win the match. In general, you want to remove the win condition from the enemies as well. There are lots of games where teams could win, but for some reason they just leave Rayquaza alone. They let the entire enemy team respawn, come back and fight and win. If you've already won the fight at Rayquaza, it's time to put a period on that match or an exclamation point. Secure Rayquaza and win the game. Pokemon Unite is a complex game, and of course there's more to it than exactly what I've described right here. But if you're looking to win as much as you can as a solo queue player, you are going to want to play in this fashion. Not my favorite way to play. I think there are lots of ways to play this game, and I think people who are great defenders and supporters and play those roles extremely well are crazy valuable to this game. However, there's no question that if you want to be a extremely high win rate player, you need to focus on winning fights and winning matches by carrying the game. Let me know what you think I missed in the comments. Let me know something that maybe you didn't realize before watching this video. Thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. I will see you all next time. We did it.